Let's pay homage to the lineage gurus, homage to the Venerable Monk Liao Ming, homage to Master Sakya Zhengkong, homage to His Holiness the 16th Karmapa, and homage to Master Dubden Dorji. Homage to the three jewels of the altar. Homage to the main deity of group practice tonight, Medicine Tathagata of the Eastern Lapis Lazuli and Balsaya Guru, Medicine King Bodhisattva, Supreme Medicine Bodhisattva, the Sunlight Bodhisattva, Moonlight Bodhisattva, 12 Medicine Generals. Sumo, Tanzan Katso, Dutton City. All Dharma masters, Dharma educators, Dharma teachers, Dharma lecturers, Dharma assistants, directors of temples and chapters, all disciples present here and over the internet. Good evening, everyone. How do you do? Esteru. Sarange.
Hola, amigo.
Hola, amigo.
Te quiero mucho.
Te quiero mucho.
Sugoin.
Sugoin.
Ichiban.
Ichiban.
Kimochi.
Kimochi.
Jumi.
Jumi.
Yapi.
Japi.
Bling bling.
Bling bling.
Konbanwa.
Konbanwa. To start, typically we would tell a joke first. The husband told the wife, let's divide the job. And the wife said, sure. So the dirty jobs and hard labor should be done by the men, like sweeping the floor, cleaning the toilet, wiping the tables. And the husband replies, okay, good, right. And then the wife said again, you study science and I study social studies. So things that use electricity should be done by you, like the washing machines, the fridge, the rice cooker, the iron. And the husband replies, okay. And the wife said, so the man is in charge of the external affairs and the woman internal affairs, so all social things should be done by you. and buying groceries, paying the bills, getting the newspapers and the milk should be done by the husband. And husband kept saying, sure. And how about you? What would you do? Don't rush. We have so much grease and heat in the kitchen, so it would ruin my skin. So why don't you do that too? And the husband kept asking, so then what would you do? And the wife said, I have a lot of things to do. I can accompany you, manage you, control you, praise you, and comfort you. That's the job of the wife. From this point, that there's no equality between man and woman. It's inequality. But the feminism saying that man and woman should be equal is impossible. You know that the woman's in power is possible, but it's impossible to have equality between men and women. Don't you think so? There was one more thing that I was going to say. Xiaoming has a diarrhea and took $100 to buy the toilet paper to go to the bathroom. And the elder lady has to give her $99 change. So he's counting, and she thought it wasn't right, so she counted again and count again the fourth times. And then finally she's confirmed it's $99. And then Xiaoming shouted, I'm not buying the toilet papers anymore. Now I want to buy the underwear. Things in this world, you have to be flexible. That you need to be flexible according to your needs. Sometimes you buy the toilet paper and sometimes you buy the underwear. But people that are not flexible, then that is attachment. A lot of things, being a human in our daily lives, we want to understand, to be flexible and dynamic. It's not the play of the words like poo. So when he's pooed, that he had to buy an underwear instead. So sometimes we have to adjust accordingly, like this time for the pandemic and coronavirus. That America is always number one in the world. So the coronavirus transmission and infections also number one. The governor announced it's very likely that there would be another stay-at-home order to stay at home, according to the governor. That's why we have to be flexible. So our annual autumn grand ceremony has been decided to be cancelled. For many years we always have 2 annual ceremonies, spring and autumn, and this is the first time that we cancel it. Many people will not be able to come to Seattle. Some people are afraid to get on the plane and afraid to come here, and you have to be quarantined for 14 days when you come here, and also when you go back home, and you have no food provided at the temple here. And then at the date of the ceremony, if it is, who knows, maybe there'll be another stay-at-home order, then we cannot even get out. Therefore, we decided to cancel the grand ceremony at the Seattle Lechang Temple and at the Rainbow Temple. So instead, what we could do, if the circumstances will be just like now, that we can still conduct ceremonies of about 20-some people and some up to 100 people on the grass outside. Is that right? That's all we could do. Therefore, we don't buy the toilet paper anymore. Now we've changed to underwear. So we don't buy toilet papers, we don't buy underwear, and we become taking off the underwear. Then Grandmaster will become the Tulku Rinpoche, but Tulku is a play of words in Chinese, like taking off your pants. Now we will do the question and answer. The True Buddha School Masters have seen the video clip on True Buddha Education. We know what is a master. A master is not a haphazard thing. So that the master should propagate to transmit the path or the Tao. That you yourself have to have the Tao in order to transmit the Tao, and you perform the work of the Tathagata, and you also help all fellow disciples to perform the work of the Tathagata and to resolve delusions, doubts, or questions. So when other people have problems, questions, that you need to be able to answer correctly so that they understand the true Buddha Dharma. Only then they would be called a master. If you cannot do it, then you're not a true master. That's not called the master or guru. That the si of the guru or teacher is to transmit the Tao, to maintain the career, and to resolve any questions or delusions. And if you cannot do these three things, then you're not a master or a guru. So you need to be clear about it yourself as a master. Only the ones who truly endowed with the Tao, so that you can transmit the Tao to and the fruit to everybody, that you can perform the career or the work of the Tathagata, and you can also resolve the delusions and the questions of sentient beings. The first question: homage to our beloved Grandmaster, peace be with you. I'm Lianhua Jinru from Taiwan. My question is on your book 131st book, The Ghostly Tales of Bardo Deliverance, on page 98, the wizardry of covering the soul. You mention about your attempt to Bardo deliver Xiao Yu, who has performed the above wizardry. So after her death, you were at first unable to find her spirit in order to Bardo deliver her. If my family, before taking refuge in Grandmaster, also habitually performed this wizardry for the whole family every year, and I am not sure if they have undone this wizardry of covering the soul, how should we avoid the same tragedy as Xiao Yu that was mentioned in the book? So what is this covering the soul? When you have bad luck this year, perhaps your own souls would be harmed. This is Taoist wizardry. So you ask a Taoist master to ask him to cover your soul so that the bad lucks will not be able to find you, that you can continue, that you would be free of bad lucks or accidents this year. That's the wizardry of covering the soul. So they attract your soul and place it in a container and then cover it so that the ghosts and the gods would not be able to find you to harm you. So this is a kind of wizardry. But typically speaking, at the end of the year, you have to open the container so that the soul would return. So when you have a bad year, in order to avoid the bad lucks, that's what you do. You can do the wizardry of covering the soul. You can do it. However, you have to remember that at the end of the year, you have to release the soul again. Or that when the bad luck has passed, that you have to release the soul. Otherwise, it would be imprisoned there. So, when Grandmaster wants to deliver you, you cannot be found because you were being trapped inside this. So if you do this covering the soul, then you also need to open it to release the soul. So there are two wizardries. One is to cover the soul, and the other one is the wizardry of releasing the soul. So you need to find the container that you use to cover the soul. So if you had it done and then the master forgot about it, could not find the container, you have to find that container and to bring it to Grandmaster, so that Grandmaster can release the soul, that in the future I can deliver you. So Grandmaster understands about this wizardry, Taoist wizardry of covering the soul, and also knows how to perform the wizardry of releasing the soul. So we need to avoid the same tragedy as Xiao Yu that was mentioned in the book, because she was being trapped due to this wizardry. So you want to ask Grandmaster to release the soul, then you can perform the Bardo deliverance. But you need to be able to find the container that contains the soul. That was the first question. The second question, Japanese Buddhism places a much greater importance on meditation and not on moral ethics. So they have produced extraordinary siddhas or adepts. My question is, what is special about these extraordinary siddhas, and what is the difference between them and the siddhas of most Buddhism? Asked by Taiwan Lianhua Zhengjian. So Japanese Buddhism does not place importance on moral ethics, but places a much greater importance on meditation. So they produce extraordinary siddhas. So this is a troublesome question. So no moral ethics, but don't value moral ethics, but value meditation. So extraordinary siddhas, what is extraordinary about it? Do you understand the questions? Danzen Katsu? Do you understand what he's asking? Anybody understands? Anyone? I'm not a Japanese. I'm not a Japanese.
那你就去建议莲花正见，去
So
找日本的佛教。
I like to have this questioner, Lianhua Zhengjian, to ask a Japanese Buddhist because
Taiwan, Chinese Taiwan, I know Japanese. I don't know. I don't know the Japanese, the Buddhism. I don't know the Japan Buddha Dharma. 而且你讲的规定，很重视规定，我就搞不清楚了。哪种？
I don't understand what you're asking here.
睡觉几点？
Oh, so about rules? What is that?
是这样吗？
What time you eat, what time you sleep? Is it it? They produce extraordinary siddhas? I don't know what kind of extraordinary siddhas Japanese monks have. Are there any? I don't know. Wakaranai.
I don't know. 所以你问的问题应该去问日本吧。
You should ask Japan for this question.
因为没有人知道你在问什么。
Because we don't understand your questions.
你自己也不知道啊，因为
And you don't know either.
特殊在哪里？你也不知道。
And you ask what is special about the extraordinary siddhas. You don't know, I don't know.
这个问题来得很奇怪。
This is a strange question.
这有一个印尼的弟子在问一个问题啊。
A disciple from Indonesia asked,
现代很多妇女做
nowadays, many women
体外人工受
do IVF, in vitro fertilization.
是否可以
Is this allowed in Tantrayana?
体外人
Due
工
to
受
the
孕
IVF process,
只有
where
正常
only a healthy embryo will be used
才可以植回母体，
and placed back in the mother's
正
womb,
常的胚胎就
and the unhealthy embryo will be discarded. Thank you.
师尊健康
Wish Grandmaster
练身是
health, great health. Om Guru Lien Sung Siddhi Om.
体外人工受孕，你教的
In vitro fertilization, Tantrayana should allow it
科技。
because it is a technology.
密教以前当然，如果按照莲花生大师那个
So,
时代，
at the time of Guru Padmasambhava, the Tibetan Tantrayana, when it flourished,
啊，不管是这个旧密、新密宗，还是旧密宗，
whether it's the old Tantrayana or the new
体外人工
Tantrayana,
受孕
never mentioned about in vitro
佛陀
fertilization,
释迦牟尼佛，
or
我们称他为能人。
at the time of Sakyamuni Buddha, we refer to Sakyamuni Buddha as the able one.
也没有体
During his era of Dharma propagation, he also never mentioned about
所有的佛
in vitro fertilization.
包括
So I believe that all the sutras,
立论
including the
密
sutras,
教的这个
uh,
甘珠尔经、
Vinaya and Abhidharma,
甘珠尔，
and also the tantric 甘珠尔 Sutra.
还有一种叫什么？论作的叫什么？一种是经，一种是序。
Sutras, Tantras, and
不是诸尔干。
discourses and compendiums,
这两种
treatises.
所谓甘珠尔，就是原来的佛经。
Danzu-er is the original sutras or their treatises. So Buddhist sutras include the sutras, the Vinaya, and Abhidharma. So Abhidharma is Danzu-er, and the sutras are Ganzu-er. Is this the case, Tanzen Katsu? You don't know. Then that'll be it.
相信这些经典里面都没有提到体外人工。
I believe that none of the sutras ever mention about in vitro fertilization. This is a new invention.
当然是可以。
And since it can be done, of course it's okay. And only a healthy embryo will be placed in the mother's womb. Of course, that's a good thing. And the abnormal one, then of course you don't use it. If you use the unhealthy or abnormal embryo, then the baby would be abnormal too. So the same thing with Buddha Dharma. Things that's on the right path can be used, but the deviant or the sideways cannot be used. The foundation of Buddha Dharma is at the right Dharma. So from the very beginning, you have to have the right thought. The right thought is extremely important. The right thought is the foundation of all attainments, of all CD. Without the right thought, so the normal or healthy embryo is like the right thought. It will grow to become a normal, healthy human being. So the same thing with abnormal embryo will grow to be an abnormal person. Therefore, the same in Buddha Dharma. The right thought is the most basic foundation. So the IVF should be allowed, because that's also life. One more question. Grandmaster, peace be with you. In my copying sutras and mantras like the Root Guru Mantra and Hiking Sutra, I always do my homework. Can all these copies be burned together when I die in the future? Or should I leave them for my descendants so that they may burn them when things go wrong? This is also a strange question, unusual question. So you copy Grandmaster's mantra. You copy the Hiking Sutra. You copying sutras. The purpose of copying sutras is to imprint it in your brain. So that's the merit. So by copying or writing a mantra, it's like imprinting it on your brain. So it generates merits. That's also the homework of spiritual cultivation. So after you copy them, Can you burn them when you die together? Sure, that'll be fine. Or you want to leave them for your descendants? That's not related to them. You know, because the merits belong to the person who copied it, who copied them. So whoever copies the sutra or the mantra, the merits would belong to that person. The same thing if you chant mantra, the merits will belong to you. If your children and grandchildren can also copy sutras and mantras, then they would generate merits for themselves. So it's not that burning them when they have bad lucks. No, because it's not related to your descendants. It's only related to you. That's why we have this saying that the man does and the man gains, and the woman does and the woman gains. So, like when Grandmaster practices, Simu doesn't gain any merits. And the same thing, when Simu practices, Grandmaster doesn't gain any merits. So, whatever the husband does or practices, he would get it. And whenever the wife does, then the wife would get it. Or the children or grandchildren. Basically, the merits belongs to the person who does it. So, if you leave them for your descendants to burn, that would be just like you're burning garbage. Now you understand? Or else, after you copy Grandmaster's mantra or hiking sutra, you can dedicate the merit to your children and grandchildren. You would get 70% according to the Siddhigarbha Sutra. You yourself would get 70%, and your children and grandchildren would get 30%. So when you say the merits or the group practice would want to be dedicated to the children or grandchildren, then you get 70% and they get 30%. It's written very clearly in Siddhigarbha Sutra. One more question. To the unexcelled His Holiness, Living Buddha Lien Sheng, Amitabha, we pray that you will continually stay in samsara to turn the Dhamma wheel. What is an authentic guru? In your book 222, Insight on Adversities, it is written, the Kata verse from the Vajraheart Pith instruction, Exalted Continuum, covering the two sadhanas, secrets and wisdom, unity and separation from the yield, offering of food and mindful recitation, vigorous strident practice sadhana, invocation of the deity to practice the middle circumference Inner secret, truly authentic, the seal of meditation in the middle circumference. Mindful recitation in sitting or standing position, the fire offering is accomplished. Obtaining and having these signs, these are the external authenticity. There were two statements. Invoking the deity to practice the middle circumference and the seal of meditation in the middle circumference. What is this middle circumference? Middle, surrounding. Now I would like to ask you what that is. Middle circumference. If you can answer, please raise your hand. Master Lian Wang said it's altar or mandala. Boundary. Yen Seng replied, treasure with energy yoga. Nobody else? Okay. Invoking the deity to practice the middle boundary or circumference. So invoking the yidam to enter into your body, to be seated at the lotus at your heart. And the yidam becomes exactly like you, and you become the yidam, and the two merge completely. Invoking the yidam to practice the middle circumference. You invoke the yidam from the space above to enter into your physical body. And inside you, there is also one deity which is called the Samaya Deity, as mentioned in Lamdre. And the Samaya Deity is you, and you are the Samaya Deity. And the cosmic deity merges with the Samaya deity. And then you become this yidam. You transform yourself to become the yidam. And this is called the spiritual cultivation. So invoking the yidam to practice the middle boundary. So we can say this middle boundary is the union of the cosmic deity and the Samaya deity. Who lives in Hong Kong? In Hong Kong there's a district called Zhonghuan. So it's like, I think called central in English. So it's the like the business and financial center of Hong Kong. So this central or middle boundary is like to invoke the yidam to enter into your center and then to be in union. So the union of the Samaya Deity with the yidam is called the middle boundary. And what is the seal of meditation in the middle boundary? Is when you are able to enter Samaya. That's the seal of meditation in the middle boundary. So the yidam and the Samaya Deity in union together, entering into samadhi. So meditation is Samaya Samaya. So what we often say, the yidam enters into your body, you transform into the yidam, and then you and yidam enter into samadhi. You and the yidam together in merging, entering into samadhi. That's the seal of meditation in the middle boundary. Middle boundary, or simply center. So that's my explanation. So now we will continue on Lamdre. The verse said, mind dwelling, dream horse gives rise to the pain of the channels and qi. The mind dwelling is the sensation arising in the mind due to the key formula of mind communion. It basically is affinity without side voracity, like a bee glued to a glue. Also, the initial accumulation period is half pure and half turbid. Even if it gives rise to meditation, it is not lucid, it is not stable. Just like a turbid water, the image is not clear. Dream horse is the dream sensation. It upholds the qi using the power of the mind, and the nature of qi is unstable. Gives rise to the pain of the channel. Qi is the bodily sensation. The ambrosia and qi are increased by the power of the inner abiding of the mind, and they enter the previously blocked channels and knots. Therefore, it gives pain. The channel pain does not shift. The qi pain shifts. The stiffness of the qi is shifted first, and then the new place is unwell. And the original place is also unwell, like going in circle. This is called the absorption practice of the accumulation. I have to explain it in order for you to understand. Otherwise, it's impossible to understand it. So this is talking about qi, channels, and the mind. And the pain generated, which is the knots of the qi. That's the pain. The verse states, mind dwelling, dream horse gives rise to the pain of the channels and qi. The mind dwelling is the sensation arising in the mind due to the key formula of mind communion. So your mind, when your minds completely stop, that's called the mind dwelling. What is the mind? According to Yogacara, the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind are unaffected. And the root for the mind gathered. So the mind dwelling is when the mind root, the mind is unmoving. At this time, there's a sensation arising. You would feel that things has solidified, that your mind has stopped. It doesn't move. What is it like? It's like the bee, and then it's glued, cannot move anymore. Humans' thoughts are like the bees, flying all over the place non-stop. But when he got on a glue, then he stuck. So that's the sensation. Like a bee being glued to a glue, to a super glue. That's the sensation or spiritual experiences of the mind dwelling. And the initial accumulation period is half pure, half turbid. Even if it gives rise to meditation, it's not lucid, it's not stable, just like turbid water. The image is not clear. What does it mean? Like when you are at the beginning of entering samadhi, sometimes you can quiet down, sometimes you cannot. And sometimes you quiet down just for a little bit and then a thought arising, still moving. Although you think that it is a kind of meditation, but it's not clear. It's not lucid and it's not stable. Because the water is turbid, half clear, half turbid. You cannot see it clearly. It hasn't settled. You cannot see clearly. So like turbid water, the image is not clear. So that's not called meditation. But even if it is, there is meditation, it's also not lucid and not stable. And then the next paragraph, dream horse. What is dream horse? Is the sensation or spiritual experiences in the dream. Of course, we also have spiritual experiences in the dreams. It upholds the qi using the power of the mind, and the nature of qi is unstable. And gives rise to the pain of the channel. Qi is the bodily sensation. The ambrosia and qi are increased by the power of the inner abiding of the mind, and they enter the previously blocked channels and knots, therefore it gives pain. So, dream horse. In our meditation, when Grandmaster meditates, it would be a little bit like entering into dreams. When I relax myself, I would enter into the state of dreams. Last night, when I meditate, I entered into dreams. The left eye, in this direction of my eyesight, a plate of fruits appeared. In meditation, that a huge plate of fruits appeared in my meditation last night. And then I visualized the fruits to become numerous, to fill the whole cosmic space, and then I offered them to my yidam, all the deities and protectors. So I'm able to do that in meditation. This is called the dream spiritual experience. So you use your own meditation to uphold the qi. So the qi is also in meditation. When the qi is moving, then of course you would have dreams, or you would have the sensations, the dream sensation, and the channel knots would feel painful. If the channels inside your body are not open, any areas that's knotted would be painful, because the qi is trying to move through that area, so it would generate pain. That's the bodily sensation. The ambrosia and qi are increased by the power of the inner abiding of the mind, and they enter the previously blocked channels and knots. Therefore it gives pain. Because you're practicing your mind, and the mind is inseparable from the qi. So when the mind stays, the qi stays. When the mind moves, the qi moves. And when the qi moves into the blocked channels and knots, then it would generate pain. Because before, the qi never passes through there, and now it passes through there, so it would be painful. And when the pain is there, the channel itself does not move. And the qi is the one that moves. And it doesn't matter how the qi moves. When it reaches the blocked channels and knots, it would be painful. And then when the qi moves to other areas, you would still feel discomfort. And the original knots and channels also feel discomfort. It would be like going in a circle. When water moves straight, it would be really fast. But when it curves, then that would slow down. So the turns, the curve, that would be where the knots or the pain is. So when the qi moves smoothly, then it's like water can move smoothly without any obstructions. But when the qi encounters blocked channels or knots, it would be like a curving roads around the mountains. Then when you drive, if you drive at the same speed, then you may get accident. But when the road is straight, you're okay. So when the roads is twists and turns and twists and turns, then it would slow down. And you have to slow down and stop. So that's the concept. So for the Ushina Vijaya temple, there's a huge curve there. So that's why when the cars are driving around it, it would hit the fence, the outer fence, and without the iron gate or iron fence, then it may hit the temple. How many cars have hit that fence? That Vijaya temple is like this, and the road is curving around it. So the cars are driving quite fast on the straight road, and then there's that curve. So the cars often hit that the iron fence there, iron gate or iron fence. So you should find a very solid iron fence there, so that it had been hit 7 times before, and even once recently, because it curved around. Because they thought, oh, everything is going smoothly, and all of a sudden it curved. It curves around. So that's the channel knots. So if you hit it, then of course there would be pain. So that's the theory there. So the channel knots, the channel pain, the chi pain, and going in circle. So the curves of the water or the smokes, that's the channel knots. So the Vijaya temple is right at that channel knots. So when the car is coming from the straight road and then all of a sudden it curves, then they hit the fence. Xiaoming ride on the train to go back to his hometown and get off from the train station. He said, wow, only a few months and it changed so much. And then he got out from the train station. He cried out, oh my God, I got off at the wrong station. The same thing with our spiritual cultivation. Things that you're familiar, then you're very clear about it. Things that's unfamiliar, then you don't know. But good thing Grandmaster has a lot of experience. You know, in my practice of my channels, chi and light drops, I'm very experienced. Because Master Dupten Dorji taught me to do the light drop practice, and also Master Sakya Tsongkhong to teach me to practice the chi, channels and light drop. So I have personal experience in this area, therefore I can explain it very clearly. The things that you don't know, like there was a question about Japanese practitioners, I cannot answer because I don't live in Japan. Although my parents spoke Japanese and I learned a little bit, but my Japanese is just a little bit. Wala wala. So my dad and my mom just had a little, just spoke Japanese and I learned a little bit by listening to them. So I can still use it when I go to Japan. When I went to the pharmacy, I can say atama itai. It's like I have a headache. So I can buy a headache medication, but not for the athlete's feet. All I can say is Hong Kong feet. Itching. And I can just lift my feet and said it's itching. At the psychiatric, and the current and the former president met each other, and how I asked them to shower, to water my plants. How do they do now? Well, they water them in the morning, at night, and even in the big rain. So I changed the garden into a deck, like a pavilion. Oh, that's not bad. That's a good place for everybody for the patients to rest. But the current president said, but nobody dared to go there. Why? Because no matter who get there, they still shower or still watering them. So even when it has become pavilion, they continue to water it. The new school term starts. And the teacher said that money cannot buy health, cannot buy happiness, cannot buy knowledge. So that's why from today on, you have to appreciate your time and also the knowledge that you learn. And then Xiaoming stood up. So since we cannot buy any knowledge with money, so then why do you still collect our tuition? So Xiaoming is very smart. Let me tell the last joke. Someone went to buy alcohol. I want to buy the isopropyl alcohol. And the seller asked, do you want the sprayer? Well, in Chinese, it's like the head of the sprayer, but it sounded like, are you spraying your head? And he said, no, I'm spraying on my hand. Do you want the spray mouth? No, I want to spray on my hands. How can you spray on your mouth? So can you spray to show me? So this is a misunderstanding between the two of them. You know, like, the isopropyl alcohol, sometimes they would have the sprayer head where you can push, but the buyer knows, but the seller misunderstands. So that's why there's the understanding. The same thing between people, we have misunderstandings too. But when you resolve the misunderstanding, then you have no more knots. Then you have no more knots. But if you don't untie the knots, then the knots would getting more bigger and more severe. So therefore, when you have misunderstanding, you can say clearly and calmly to each other. But if you have misunderstanding and you don't resolve it, then you always have the misunderstanding, right? So the same thing for spiritual cultivator. Between Grandmaster and all the fellow disciples, we can say that we can face anything openly and directly. No misunderstanding. Because when there's misunderstanding, there's always this knot. And if you don't untie it, then the misunderstanding would become severe. Between Vajra brothers and between Vajra brothers and Grandmaster, you can say anything. You can make it public. And then if there's misunderstanding, we want to resolve it. Because if you cannot resolve it, then it would become the chi knots of your heart. Then it would become the channel knots. Then it would always become the curve or the twist that cannot be open anymore in the future.
法王圣尊连生活佛宝贵的
Mani
法
Padme
语
Hum.